Are you really sure that this is the signature menu item?
The new CEO, Ryan, pointed to the cake roll I made. This cake roll has a special place in my heart. After all, it was the first product I made after coming to this shop.
Yes, this one is number 1 in sales.
I said that confidently. But then to that, Ryan said,
Sweet beans in a roll cake? It looks boring and it's too plain to be the signature item.
And he laughed. My name is Ted. I am a 32-year-old patissier. My parents were busy working together and I used to take care of my younger sister, who is 3 years younger than me. Even now, she and I are very close. But I have always had a sweet tooth, and many times I have made my sister cry because I took all the sweets my mother bought all for myself. I thought it was uncool for a guy to have a sweet tooth, so I pretended to not like sweets. But one day, I became curious about the sweets that a girl in my class had. The girl was quiet, and I had never talked to her, but from what the girls around me said, I found out that her family owned a sweets shop. I wondered if they were leftovers from the store, but every once in a while I saw the girl eating some sweets during her lunch break, and I couldn't help but ask her about it.
Is that good?
Embarrassed, I said bluntly, and she laughed and nodded and gave me a piece of what she was eating. I have never forgotten the excitement I felt when I ate it. By the way, she was my first love. Then I started working part-time at a restaurant. With the money from my first part-time job, I would sneak out to her family's sweet shop and buy gifts for my family. When I brought it home, my sister was jumping up and down with joy. My parents were surprised at my behavior, but smiled when they ate the sweets. My father patted me on the head for the first time in about 10 years. Moved by the fact that I could make people smile, I worked part-time at several restaurants, and by the time I graduated from high school, I had set my goal on becoming a patissier. And now I work as a patissier at a pastry shop in town. Having studied not just the Western confectionery, but also the Japanese confectionery, I often fuse Western and Japanese sweets. And the first cake I made after coming to this store was a roll cake with sweet beans. The manager was very impressed with the cake, and it sold very well when it was introduced at the store. It is now a long-selling signature item. The parent company of the confectionery store where I work is a company that manages a restaurant, and not long ago the manager told me that the CEO of the company was going to change. The previous CEO had visited the store several times and praised the roll cakes I made, but how will the new CEO be? According to the manager's information, a relative of the current CEO will be the CEO, and he would be the second-generation CEO. The manager is concerned about whether this change in CEO will result in any changes in management policies and so on. 1 month later, unfortunately, the manager's worry became a reality. The new CEO came to the store for an inspection. He is probably in his 40s. As soon as he entered the store, he looked down on us. Then he approaches the roll cake section of the signature menu.
Are you sure this is the signature menu item?
I answered confidently.
Yes, this is the number 1 selling item.
Then the new president laughed and said,
Sweet beans on a roll cake? It looks so boring, and this is too plain to be the signature menu.
He continued,
There must be something more stylish on the menu, right? We are a pastry shop, for goodness sake. This is not a Japanese confectionery shop, okay? Don't make something plain or boring. Make something more glamorous. I'm going to replace the signature menu too, and I want you to come up with 5 new items by the end of the month. I don't care about how they taste. It's all about looks nowadays. Something that stands out, that will be talked about on social networking sites, is what I'm looking for. Please.
As he said this, he left the shop. The manager was puzzled. I had studied Japanese confectionery, so I couldn't tolerate his attitude of making fun of it. But there was no way I could go against him because of my position. The manager and I were mainly responsible for product development, so we were busy developing new products day after day. Then one day, a male customer showed up.
Oh? Is that you, Ted?
It was someone I had seen before. He was a pâtissier at a famous store from the next district. I learned the basics of pastry making from this man. I saw him in a magazine, went to his store, and although he told me he wasn't hiring, I went to him directly and asked him to hire me. His name was Alan. He is 10 years older than me.
Alan, what are you doing here?
I was surprised at the suddenness of the situation, and Alan answered.
I'm opening a store in front over there, right next to the bus station. That's less than 5 minutes away from here.
I panicked. If he opens a shop so close to the bus station, it will affect our sales for sure. Alan then continues to say this.
I haven't heard from you for a while, but I didn't realize you were working here. I'd love to have you come to our store. Well, I'm looking forward to working with you as a competitor for the time being.
Alan bought a roll cake from the signature menu and left as he said that. When I told the manager, he and I started to panic.
Oh, this isn't good. We're definitely no match for them. Maybe we should renovate the store and make it more accessible to businessmen and men who can find it hard for them to go into the shop.
I said this in desperation, but the manager was surprisingly receptive to the idea.
That's a good idea. Let's tell this to the CEO when he comes around the next time.
A month later, Ryan came back to the store. When I put out the new product, he began to sigh.
Oh, it's too plain and boring. Boring. See, I told you to make something like this.
Saying that, Ryan shows me the screen of his smartphone. What is shown there are strangely colorful cakes and rainbow donuts, all of which looked fancy but don't look very tasty.
This is the kind of thing that the young people want, you know?
That's what Ryan says, but I wish that he would think about the age range of our actual customers. So I respond him saying this.
Our customers and the people who live around here are mostly older people, housewives, and businessmen, rather than the younger people. I think something like this would be great if we were in a town where there are lots of young people. It doesn't fit our store's color, and I'm not sure we should be concerned with just how it looks. What about remodeling the store for businessmen on their way home from work or for older people who find it difficult to set foot into the shop? That would attract more customers and sales would...
As I say that much, Ryan begins to interrupt me.
What's wrong with you? You're just an employee, aren't you? How dare you talk back to me? There are plenty of people who could take your place.
As I was being astounded by his somewhat abusive words, the manager says this to defend me.
Sir, Ted's power is real. In fact, more than 90% of our products are made by him.
However, Ryan would not budge.
I'm saying we can't compete with such a boring thing like what you already sell here. This is a business. We're not just doing it for fun like you guys.
I got furious at his words.
Huh? What do you mean by that? Do you think that everyone would love something that stands out? We are not playing around either. I make a serious effort every day to make our products and bring smiles to people who eat them.
The manager rushed to stop me, but I couldn't stop. Then Ryan began to raise his voice.
You're so annoying. If you don't like it, then quit. You're fired. You're fired. If you don't want to be fired, then get down on your knees and plead for it.
As soon as he said that, I sighed to myself, thinking,
this company is finished.
That night, I grabbed my phone and pulled up Alan's number. I was wondering for a while whether to press the call button or not, looking at the screen. Then all of a sudden, the ringtone echoes, and I almost dropped my phone. I managed to regain my grip on the phone and look at the screen to see Alan's name on the display. Surprised, I answered the phone. Alan's store had already been open for a week, and as expected, the response had been great, with the store being sold out of items every day. I had heard the rumors as well.
I wondered if it would be a good idea for me as a competitor to tell you this, But I actually do want you to help us, Ted. That roll cake was delicious.
When Alan told me that, I answered honestly.
Actually, I'm quitting my current company.
To that, Alan had his happy voice and said,
Then I want you to come to my place.
The next day, I went to the store as usual to go through the resignation procedures. The manager who had arrived before me looked flustered and said,
Ted, I'm sorry about yesterday. I asked Ryan not to fire you, but he got very angry, and now I'm fired too.
What? I shouted at Dave's unexpected words.
But I couldn't not open the store today, so I came here anyway. I don't know what's going to happen now.
As I am startled by his words, the door to the store opens.
I'm sorry, we haven't opened yet.
As I turn around, I see Ryan and a strange man enter the shop. Then Ryan looked at us and said,
You guys are no longer needed. This is the new manager and patissier, my son. He has trained in France, so he is very good at what he does. Now that we have a rival store, you are no longer strong enough. Please contact the HQ to arrange for your resignation.
The rival store that Ryan mentioned must be about Alan's store. The manager and I were given personal belongings and kicked out of the store. When I told the manager that I had been invited to Alan's store, he said,
That's great. He seems to have good reputation on the internet. I hope you'll do his best to bring that store down.
And he laughed. Soon after that, I prepared for my new job and started working at Alan's restaurant. The shop was located in front of a bus station, and there were people of all ages there. Alan would say this to me.
Ted, you trained in Japanese confectionery, right? The roll cakes that were on the signature menu were delicious. I want you to make something like that at our store too.
I was delighted to hear that and began product development. I started developing new products, and some of the sweets I came up with, which were a fusion of Japanese and Western confectionaries, sold very well. We became busier than ever and short on staff, so Alan asked me if I knew anyone who would be good for the job. Without hesitation, I told him about my previous store manager, Dave, and contacted him. Dave said he would accept the position with an immediate answer. Alan said that he was also going to increase the number of part-timers and was interviewing for new ones. When I greeted the new part-timer, she said, Is that you, Ted? I don't know any girls who looked beautiful like her, was what I thought in my mind, and while I was thinking of who she could be, she began to say, I'm Emma. I was in the same class with you in high school, do you remember? My family has a sweets shop. Then it hit me that she was my first love. I wondered if she was going to work at her parents' sweet shop, but apparently her brother and his wife had taken over the business and they had enough people. I was happy to work with her, and I enjoyed my job even more. About a month later, Dave started talking about the store where he and I used to work at.
It seems that sales at that store have dropped considerably. The menu has changed completely now, and there are colorful cakes on the shelves, just like what the CEO wants, but there are no customers at all. According to Dave, the roll cakes, which were the signature items on the menu, were on the store's shelves at first, but on the internet reviews, they were reviewed as not being tasty at all. I think they must have cut costs and changed the ingredients. Besides, I heard that Ryan's son did indeed go to France, but he was actually playing around without training to be an actual patissier.
Dave always were well informed and always made gossips whenever he can. Dave and I decided to stop by the shop we used to work on our way home. We were doing that just to tease them. When we arrived at the shop, the interior was dimly lit. Without opening the door, we peeked inside and saw Ryan and his son standing there. I wondered if the store was already closed. The hours were open when we were there, but maybe they changed. While I was talking with Dave about this, Ryan noticed us. Then he approached us.
You two, what is that recipe?
Ryan was furious.
We made it according to the recipe, but now people are saying that it tastes really bad. You must have left a different recipe on purpose.
I opened my mouth in disgust.
You fired me and I was kicked out the next day. I didn't have time to go through all the trouble of doing that. But if you make it according to the recipe and they say it's bad, that means that you're not a good pâtissier, don't you think so?
Dave, standing next to me, laughed. I continued.
But you know, I see lots of colorful cakes and pastries there, the ones that you wanted, Ryan. So I bet the sales are going well.
Then Ryan's face turns red and he yells at me.
Shut up! Get out!
The new manager, his son, only looked at us from behind the counter. About a week later, Ryan came into Alan's store. I saw him crowding over Emma, who was at the front of the store, and I rushed over to him.
So you were working at our rival shop, huh? Don't tell me you didn't illegally sell our recipes and our company's confidential information.
Like that, Ryan suddenly started making a fuss, so I took him outside the store and talked to him.
I would never do such a thing. Then why did our store go out of business?
That was the first time I learned that the store had gone out of business.
Well, even if you say so, I didn't do anything, nor did I make any of the products I had developed at your store in this store. Isn't it the new manager's fault that made the store go out of business? Also, as I said before, there's no way products like the ones you're selling would sell in that store's location, don't you think so? That's called you lack in research.
The next moment I said that, I felt a shock on my cheek. Next thing I knew, I was pressing my cheek. It seemed that I had been hit by Ryan. Dave saw this and jumped out.
Ted is completely right. We were the ones who were fired in an unreasonable way. Fired in an unreasonable way?
Ryan was furious again, and just as he swung at Dave, a policeman came running. It seems that Alan called the police, and like that, Ryan was caught red-handed and taken away by the cops. Ted, are you okay? Emma approached me and helped me get up on my knees as I was holding my red, swollen cheek, and Alan told me to go to the hospital. I went to the hospital to get checked out and got a medical certificate. When I returned from the hospital, Dave suggested that I sue Ryan for the injury and how he fired us in an unreasonable way. Sure, it's no exaggeration to say that I was flabbergasted and cried myself to sleep when Ryan made me quit the store. But come to think of it, that was an unfair dismissal. Besides, I can't help but feel a bit angry if I don't do something about it. So Dave and I decided to sue Ryan for unfair dismissal and me for personal injury as well. Ryan was reluctant to admit that he had wrongfully dismissed both Dave and I, but Dave has secretly recorded the incident when Ryan told me that I was fired with his smartphone. This became evidence, and Ryan, who could no longer get away with it, offered to settle the case. So Ryan paid us the settlement fee to both Dave and I. With this, I am now completely cut off with the company. It seems that Ryan had also threatened other employees that they'd be fired in an unreasonable way, and that others had sued him as well, but I don't know what happened after that. Alan's store was getting magazine coverage and sales were increasing. In the midst of all this, I couldn't forget how I felt at the time. So I confessed my feelings to Emma. To my surprise, we are now dating on the premise of marriage. Speaking of marriage, my sister just recently had her wedding. She asked me to make her a wedding cake, which I did confidently, and it was well received at the venue. I gained confidence once again. I will continue to hone my skills as a pâtissière and make Emma happy.